번은 한국학중앙연구원의 명예교수로 계신 이성미 교수님을 모시겠습니다. 이성미 교수님에 대해서 따로 소개를 안 드려도 될 정도로 여기 있는 많은 분들이 잘 아시고 계시는데요. 그냥 한 가지만 제가 덧붙이자면 지금 우리가 오늘 이 자리에서 지금 축하를 하고 있는 이 코리아 파운데이션의 이 큐레이터 워크숍 프로그램을 처음부터 이것을 이제 입안을 할 때 많은 역할을 하셨고 그 후에 지금까지 15회에 걸쳐서 이것이 성공적으로 진행되는데 굉장히 중요한 역할을 해주셨기 때문에 데모라고 말씀을 드려도 될 정도로 이성미 선생님의 역할은 상당히 크셨습니다. 그럼 이성미 선생님의 코멘트를 듣도록 하겠습니다. 박수로 맞아주시죠.
Because three speakers took all our time, I've been sitting and crossing off lines and lines of comments that I have made to present here today. But I don't think I need much time. I will just simply comment on the three speakers one by one. Mr. Cha is an insider of the Korea Foundation. Hence, he is in a good position to describe numerous achievements of the Korea Foundation's support programs of overseas museums since 1991. Mr. Cha aptly characterizes the workings in terms of hardware-software harmony that creates synergy for a leap forward. For example, Guggenheim Museum, normally not associated with Korean art, has shown contemporary Korean artists such as Lee Woo-hwan, Yang Hae-gyu, and Seo Do-ho, who are internationally well known under the KF support program. This is a proof that the program is indeed global and successful. And he also talks about the curators workshop and other Korea Foundation's program. I will also talk about some of them in my paper in the afternoon. I would like to simply congratulate the Korea Foundation and Mr. Cha, its executive vice president, for all of what the foundation has achieved with its museum programs since 1991. The next paper, Mr. Anderson's wording, making encyclopedic museum more encyclopedic, is well phrased and indeed the highest tribute to the Korea Foundation's effort in making sure mark of Korean culture in the encyclopedic museum, such as the British Museum. He addresses so many issues in his talk. Since there's another discussant, Professor Cho Insoo there, I will make comments on only a few issues, hoping that Professor Cho will do the rest. Mr. Anderson talks about qualifications of Korean art curators at museums overseas. I do that in my paper in the afternoon. In his enumeration of books in English on Korean art, for some reason, he did not mention the 14 books in the KF's Korean Culture series. I think these books are really wonderful, not because my book is one of those, but because Director Kim Young-na's book is number one of that, and then Dr. Chung Hyung-min, who will present her talk this afternoon, has another one. And really, with these 14 books, you can't say that there aren't enough books on Korean art and culture in English. I will skip a lot of these. I will address the issue of showing North Korean artworks. As for the controversy on the British Museum's policy of acquiring and exhibiting contemporary North Korean artworks, there could be pro and con opinions even among the audience here. Some North Korean artworks, such as the huge statue of Kim Il-sung, Mr. Anderson showed on the screen juxtaposed with the statue of Augustus. These things can be termed as socialist realist art, and in that sense, it is a part of the zeitgeist of our time. I used to include some of the works in my graduate lectures. However, I do not think it advisable to exhibit North Korean artworks simply because of their novelty value. I don't think he does that. But anyway, we'll take care of that issue. And finally, he talks about the multiple sources of funding from Korea for Korean art program or Korean galleries and so on. I think aside from the Korea Foundation, which is under the jurisdiction of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the Cultural Heritage Administration also provides support for preliminary research on artworks and artifacts in museums overseas and for the catalog of publication. Mr. Rob's presentation included the catalog of his museum done under this program. The third is from the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. Since Korea's earning through tourism is ever increasing, the ministry set up a fund called Tourism Fund and delegated the implementing of the fund to the National Museum of Korea. The NMK is now sending special lecturers to overseas museums to increase the level of interest in Korea and Korean art among the general populace there. So the three sources have slightly different emphases and directions among them. I think the more the better. And by the way, I have been to, I just came back from Houston and San Francisco on this program last month. The third paper by Mr. Rob is full of wonderful stories about the Philadelphia Museum of Art, Korean Art Gallery program, and Insoo. In my presentation, I also talk about the commendable group called the Korean Heritage Group in his museum. I will also talk a little bit about that in my paper. Mr. Rob's title, Make No Small Plans. I like the title very much, wherever it came from anyway. The concept behind it is to push the limits to infinity. And this is what makes the difference and progress in our world today. It is very much akin to Steve Jobs' phrase, think different. The Art of Joseon Dynasty, the PowerPoint creation of the image was excellent. Initiated by Mr. Rob and fully supported by Dr. Choi Gang-sik, will indeed be a milestone in the history of overseas Korean art galleries. And I also heard that the LACMA and the Houston all participated in fundraising and receiving the exhibition and so on. So this kind of collaboration in the preparation stage is really wonderful. Not only the theme of the project, but also the scale is impressive. It consists of more than 170 works from the Joseon Dynasty alone, and the catalog will be about 500 pages. I was informed by the exhibitions department at the National Museum. Looking back at the time of the opening of the Arts of Korea Gallery at the Met in 1998, the Met published the Arts of Korea of 511 pages, in which the scholarship of the first generation of Korean art historians, myself and others, was included, represented. But the new book will represent scholarship of the second generation of scholars. So it should be really wonderful. Thank you.
예, 감사합니다. 지금 멀리서 오셔서 발표를 해주시는 바람에 제가 중간에 빨리빨리 진행을 못했기 때문에 조금 시간이 지체가 됐습니다. 세 분 모두 영어로 발표를 해주셨기 때문에 두 번째 질의자인 저도 영어로, 질문은 영어로 하겠습니다. Actually, I plan to skip my questions because we are a little behind the schedule, but Professor Yi passed the ball to me, so I have to ask questions for each speakers. Okay, I enjoyed all your presentations and would like to comment some point that we can think more. The first presentation by Vice President Cha Do-hyun, for that I have one question. Now, most of the museums with Korea Foundation supported Korean gallery in North America and Europe, as we heard from the Director Anderson's calculation. However, there are many other regions and countries that South Korean government has established long diplomatic relationship, cultural exchanges, and economic trade. For example, Vietnam, India, Brazil, and Nigeria, to name a few. Although museums in these countries do not have enough Korean art collections, there are possible solutions for more Korean galleries, such as loan exhibitions and digital reproductions of important art objects. I would like to hear what is the Korea Foundation's plan and strategy for global expansion of Korean galleries in the future. And I have one question for Director Anderson. I still vividly remember how I was thrilled at the new Korean gallery in British Museum when it opened in 2000. However, so far as I know, no large-scale special exhibition of Korean art has been organized by British Museum. As we heard from Director Rob's presentation, a nice special exhibition could have a marked impact on the field. For example, the first Emperor China's Terracotta Army held in British Museum in 2007 was an enormous success and drew 850,000 visitors. Based on your experience and expert knowledge as a museum director, could you suggest possible special exhibition topics of Korean art for British Museum or other encyclopedic museums? And for Director Robs, I also have one question. Last year, I actually visited Philadelphia Museum Art for the first time and was especially impressed by the way of displaying artworks over there. As many of you know, the Philadelphia Museum galleries feature artworks in original architectural settings, Chinese religious art in Buddhist temple, and Japanese art in tea house, etc. However, Korean gallery is rather small and not in architectural context. The Philadelphia Museum is now changing on the big plan, as I know. Franco Gehry's expansion design will increase the museum's display space by 60%. In this transitional phase, I would like to hear your ambition and foundational commitment to renovate Korean gallery. In order to display Korean artworks in architectural environment, do you have any similar or even bigger plan than Sarangbang in British Museum? I learned a lot from these three papers, and now we can have a nice discussion. Thank you. So, Vice President Park, would you like a response?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chu. Thank you for your good question. As you already said, maybe is all the directors of the museums of the world curious about our policy, supporting policy of the Korean galleries. Frankly speaking, we have been confronted with a severe budget constraints, and especially last 3 years. And as a public organization, we are we are concord with government policy that focus on the international welfare. So now, while still the provision support for the overseas museum to establish Korean gallery, it is still, we know well, still concentrated with the North American and the European area, and there's still a long way to go far. In the midterm, our support and our provision will be focused on the collective exhibition among the galleries, rather than new establishment of Korean gallery, because there are already many of the distinguished museums establish its own gallery. As you said, even though we consider about the support of the museums of other areas to establish the Korean gallery, yes, there still exists a problem, such as the shortage of the Korean-related art craft and the problem of the quality.
Okay.
But
since we are limited time, so could you sum up?
But in the long run and the long term, as our condition of budget or condition of funds will be improved, we actively consider about reopening the opportunity of establishing the Korean galleries in the abroad museums.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad to hear your promise and commitment for future support. Thank you. And Director Anderson, could you share your secret not only with the Jane Portal but with us?
I can only answer the first part of your question, is why hasn't the British Museum done another temporary exhibition recently by saying that I'm no longer in charge. I gave up being director in 2002, and it's not my responsibility anymore, and I would certainly not try to answer that question for my successor. The fact is, of course, that the British Museum has many wide responsibilities. The previous temporary exhibition on Korea was done as long ago as the 1980s. And of course, exhibitions are expensive and difficult to do. It was particularly difficult to do, I have to say, around the year 2000 and the early years of the 21st century, because the British Museum rebuilt itself, if you remember. I have to say that the museum was not closed for a single day, which meant great difficulties, but we did do it. And that left a legacy of things which had to be done afterwards in the early 2000s. So there were problems in doing that. There were galleries to be finished, and there were certain things to be made good after the difficulties which had been caused by the recreation of the British Museum and the building of the Great Court. So perhaps that's part of the reason. I think the other thing is that there are now fewer exhibitions in the British Museum. When I was there were probably too many. I'm not going to comment on whether there are too few now, but it does mean that the exhibitions are bigger, and I have to say are better marketed than they were in my day. So I'm not really going to answer your question properly. As far as new possible exhibitions are concerned, well, I'm not a Korean specialist by any means, and so therefore what I have to say probably doesn't carry a lot of weight. But I will say that I would be particularly interested in seeing how, for example, the influence of Korea's ceramic tradition spread to the West. I showed an illustration of Bernard Leach. I don't think there's ever been an exhibition on that particular subject before. And another exhibition, which I'd like to see, also another ceramic exhibition, would be about, in a sense, about trade and technology between China, Korea, and Japan. Again, spreading boundaries of Korea perhaps beyond the present political lines. So this is not a very helpful suggestion because, of course, as I say, I carry no weight at all. I'm essentially have left the museum for 10 years, but that's something which I think might be done.
Okay, thank you very much. And Director Robs, I think you don't need to be too careful because it's, I think it's not, you can say it off the record for the future possible permanent Korean galleries plan.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Philadelphia Museum of Art, its galleries are distinguished and made rather unique by the presence of a number of not simply architectural elements, but sometimes major rooms, and this is certainly the case in our Asian galleries, where we have a South Indian temple hall, we have a reception hall from a ducal palace in Beijing dating to the 16th century, and a number of other architectural artifacts, very notable ones. It makes life complicated for me, and not always in the best sense of that word. Our facilities master plan calls for the virtual doubling of the space that we devote to the presentation of Asian art. And in my opinion, it's the part of the collection that is in greatest need of more space for the display of works from the collection. And therein lies the important, or that's the important clause to keep in mind. If given a choice, and of course directors have fewer choices than one might imagine, being subject to a lot of different influences from different directions, but if given a choice, I probably wouldn't opt for the creation and installation of any more architectural ensembles or spaces in our museum, because right now the experience of Asian art in our galleries is something like a slalom course. You go through these big architectural spaces, all very impressive, to smaller galleries typically that display parts of our collection, China, Japan, Korea, and the like. And therefore, the experience of the collection is somewhat discontinuous, and none of those areas, quite frankly, perhaps Japan is the most disenfranchised, have enough space to show what we have today, let alone what we'd like to do in the future. So first and foremost is to rebalance the museum and provide simply much larger and much more flexible spaces for the straightforward presentation of the collection, which will allow us to show more works of art, to show them in different narrative sequences, which I think is very, very important for visitors experiencing the arts of China, Korea, Japan, and the like. But also, if I had my way, what I would probably try to engineer into those new galleries would be, coming back to one thing that Director Anderson said is missing in many museums, and that is spaces in between different cultures so that they can be put together, conversations can be created that reflect the history of the transmission of culture, for interactions that occurred over time. We don't have those kinds of spaces in the museum, and I think they are actually the highest priority amongst the new spaces we might wish to create.
Thank you very much. And Professor Lee, would you like response? Okay, actually we have another general discussion session, so we can develop this discussion and so in later. And thank you very much for this wonderful first session, and thank you for all three speakers and discussion. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Zhou. I'm sure the audience has a lot of questions. That's why we gave out these pieces of paper with your conference kit for you to fill out with your questions, and we can discuss that during the general discussion. And this concludes our morning session, and complimentary lunch will be served on the 19th floor at Mehwa Hall. So our staff will be outside to guide you. Enjoy your meal, and we'll see you back here at 2 p.m. Thank you. And for the speakers and the curators, your lunch will be served across the lobby at the press club, and our staff will be there to guide you. So we'll see you there. Thank you. 이것으로 오전에 공식 입장을 마무리하고 오찬을 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 오찬은 19층 매화홀에서 준비되어 있고요. 진행위원들이 밖에서 안내를 해드릴 겁니다. 식사 끝